All right, let's start here. The ANC will suspend members charged with corruption or other serious crimes. That's if they refuse to step aside. The party says it will be writing to affected members to inform them of the terms and conditions of their suspension. Let's continue to get more on this top story. I'm joined by ANC spokesperson Pule Mabe. Mr. Mabe, thank you so much for your time this evening. And it is an important day, and I think it's really important to get as much information as possible out so that everyone understands exactly what's going on. Are you able to tell us how many ANC members are facing these suspension letters this evening?
Well, evening to your viewers. When we concluded our National Executive Committee on the 26th to the 29th of March, we had concluded on the operationalization of the step-aside principle and had agreed that we would allow for a 30-day period through which those of our members impacted upon by that kind of a decision are accordingly advised, but to also allow provinces working together with the Secretary General's office to do a compilation of that kind of a list, which should be served before the National Working Committee and ultimately to the National Executive Committee. That work has already happened. The National Working Committee had taken place yesterday and had been updated on the work that the national officials had been seized with, including the engagement that shall have taken place with our provinces. But also, notably, what was also critical was the presentation of the terms and conditions of stepping aside, which was being done by the task team led by the Treasurer General, Comrade Paul Mashatile, which will effectively now outline conditionalities. What are the conditions when we've stepped aside voluntarily and all of that? And then the second part of that was to then say those that would not have stepped aside in the 30-day period must then be advised through the activation of 25.70 of the ANC Constitution of their summary suspension in terms of what would have been agreed upon by that National Executive Committee of the 26th to the 29th of March.
All right, so we do have news that Mike Mabuya Kulu... Sorry, I just wanted... Mike Mabuya Kulu has actually stepped aside. Are you able to tell us if any other members have come forward to voluntarily step aside?
Well, we would only know really when we go into the National Executive Committee, because the report done by the Secretary General's office, working together with provinces, would be quite comprehensive. It would state that a member X from this province faces this kind of a case with this kind of a case.
We already know that Mike, I'm with you, but Mike Mabuya Kulu has already indicated that he is stepping aside. Has anyone else indicated that they are actually going to step aside now?
Well, at this stage, what is really the Deputy Chairperson of KwaZulu-Natal has been the one coming out in the manner that he has done. We will know the rest of the report when we go into the meeting of the National Executive Committee.
All right, so at the moment, he's the only person that you know of who is voluntarily stepping aside.
Because those reports would sit with a specific office in the organization.
Yeah, so we know that the necessary letters are being written to affected members who are not stepping aside, as far as you know. How many letters are you preparing? Can you give us a number?
Well, again, that would be part of what we will also know when we get into the meeting of the National Executive Committee. I mean, the ANC works like this. You have got what is called the Secretary General's office, run by the Secretary General and the Deputy Secretary General, and they've got a strong administrative army that effectively assists them in doing their own work. So you are expecting that where they are now, they are preparing reports that must serve before the National Executive Committee, including giving the NEC the sort of update on what has happened and what has
I hear you. I'm just quoting from the mail sent out from you, where it says the NWC instructed that the necessary letters must be written. So are you able to give us an idea of how many letters are being written, or you're not able to tell us?
We will only know that when we get into a meeting. We took this decision yesterday in the National Working Committee. So the SGO will have to be doing that kind of an audit, checking who has advised them and who has not advised them, and then acting in that manner. By the time they get to the meeting, they'll be able to update the National Executive Committee.
I got you. Mr. Maba, I have to ask you, is Ace Magashule recusing himself from this letter-writing process to people who are refusing to step aside, bearing in mind that, as far as we know, he himself has not yet stepped aside because of the corruption charges he's facing?
Well, I've clarified this question with another media outlet to the extent that the ANC has got sufficient internal machinery to be able to do its work. Have faith that the ANC will be able to discharge that kind of work, and that there are systems in place within the SGO to be able to do that work.
All right, I'm just going to quote again, and this is what the President said, and it's in your press release. Where a public representative, office bearer, has been indicted to appear in court, the Secretary-General or Provincial Secretary, acting on behalf of the NEC, may suspend such public representatives. So what we've got is the Secretary-General in charge of acting on the behalf of the parties to suspend those public representatives who won't step down. This is an absolute conundrum. Surely the Secretary-General has stepped aside from this particular process, and surely you're able to tell us what's happening there.
Well, the African National Congress has got sufficient machinery, well within organization, to be able to deal with all of these issues. We are going into the National Executive Committee meeting this coming weekend. We will be able to come out and pronounce ourselves on what would have happened in the intervening period.
Okay, the reason I'm confused is that this press release clearly says that letters are being written. So surely there must be a person in charge. So is it the Secretary-General or is it not?
But that's why I'm saying that we have got internal machinery in the organization to be able to do the work that needs to be done. Just as when we say those systems have been activated.
So when you say internal machinery, are you saying there's a lot of other people who could be doing this? I'm just wanting a simple understanding.
Because look, I don't know at this stage the work that the SGO is seized with as it relates to that kind of communications and all of that. We will be able to have full appreciation of that kind of work when we go into the National Executive Committee. But we are quite, the rules of procedure in the African National Congress are quite clear on what needs to happen.
I mean, the rules,
So there is no confusion in the
Well, no, it is quite confusing. I'll tell you why. Because it clearly says here the Secretary-General or Provincial Secretary may suspend such public representatives. So it's actually his job. I just want to know if he's doing it and if he doesn't find it a very conflicted situation. I mean, is he writing himself a letter?
Well, I can clarify. Let me just clarify for the sake of the viewers of eNCA. The Secretary General is an office, and that office is made out of the Secretary General and the Deputy Secretary General. They have got an administrative machinery in the office that really conduct that kind of work. Where we are sitting now, ourselves, we have gone into the National Working Committee. We have reinforced decisions of the last NEC. We are now clear in terms of what needs to happen. Our own national officials working together as a team will be able to then say, how do we then operationalize some of these things, seeing that so that there are no grey areas.
Sure, I hear you. Look, I suppose the reason I'm banging on about it, Mr. Mabi, is that it's not a good look, is it, not to be absolutely clear about where Mr. Magashule is in all of this. Is he stepping aside from this? Are other people doing it?
Look, the simpler part of all of this is that in an instance where the Secretary General is absent from performing his responsibility because of whatever organizational position that exists, the DSG plays that kind of a role. But understand this. It's a way. It's for the first time that the ANC is able to deal with a situation like this. It's a weighty matter for the African National Congress. We've got to make sure that how we move into it, we are also able to address all the kind of sensitivities that exist, so that we still leave the organization intact and united.
All right.
So that's why you hear us having to attend to it in the manner that we are doing, because we have got to carry the whole the entirety of the African National Congress with us as we move there.
Yeah, so a process has to be followed. It's very delicate. I have to ask you, if it comes to it that the ANC has to suspend someone rather than them voluntarily stepping aside, are they going to be facing a further disciplinary consequence for not voluntarily stepping aside?
Well, there are already terms and conditions outlined through a process that is led by the Treasurer General in terms of conditions under which they will be suspended, when they are expected to report, and all of that. So those are outlined. There's a proposal already that will be going into the National Executive Committee. I'm sure when we rise from the NEC, we'll make sure that all of this information is made available to our structures and to the general public.
Are you able to clarify at this stage, and I hear you that it needs to be communicated to the members first, but let's say one of the people refusing to step aside, or voluntarily stepping aside, in fact, is a member of parliament or perhaps a member of a provincial legislature where they would receive a salary. Will they, in their stepping aside or suspension, automatically lose their position and that salary or not?
Well, there are clear conditions outlined there. And of course, I mean, cases are going to be dealt with case by case. So it's going to be important. When the ANC rises out of its National Executive Committee this coming weekend, it will be able to give better clarity on all of this. Because conditions for appealing decisions of the Integrity Commission have also been created to allow members who might feel that they want to either raise an appeal on a sentence that is being imposed. A member might be wanting to say, but I'm a breadwinner. If I'm disempowered in this way, I might not be able to perform some of my own responsibilities. Or someone might say, but this case has been going on already for 5 years. If it continues like this and the term of office of the ANC in a province, it's only 5 years, it actually disenfranchises me from participating in the full life of organization. Yeah. So all of those things will have to be looked into.
All right, and I also note that the suspension is sort of for a 6-month chunk at a time, which I would imagine is with a view of justice delayed is justice denied. You can't have someone eternally on suspension, am I right?
But it also allows you every month to report to your own secretariat on developments. Because when you step aside, really, you are not being unelected from your position. I mean, once your issues are done and you are cleared, I mean, if Mike Mabuya steps aside and then he gets to be cleared in a court of law, he goes back, he performs in his position. Because when you step aside, you are not stepping down. You are simply standing on the side to be able to deal with issues that you might want to attend to at the time.
All right. Well, thank you so much for chatting to us this evening. We do appreciate it. That, of course, was Pule Mabe, who speaks for the African National Congress.